Hello, I'm Iqbal and welcome to the Theek Thak podcast brought to you by the Sikh Welfare Council, also known as SIWEC. In Punjabi, Theek Thak means all well or all good. It's common to ask people if everything is Theek Thak when we meet them. In this podcast series, we want to take what it means to be all well and all good seriously. We want to focus on an aspect of our health that we often don't pay enough attention to and very often don't know how to pay attention to. I'm referring to mental health. Now, I'm not an expert on issues related to mental health, but I have a number of questions and I'm eager to learn. In this podcast series, I will be speaking with a number of experts. Over the coming weeks, experts will discuss issues ranging from mental health issues that we face as a community to stress amongst the youth. We will also discuss resources that are available to all of us. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Theek Thak podcast. In our previous episode, we spoke with a specialist working in dementia care. Carrying on from that conversation, today we have the privilege of a mother-daughter pair who've cared for a loved one who was grappling with dementia. It is my privilege and honor today to be speaking with Ichaa and Manjit, who will be sharing a very personal story about how they cared for their grandmother and mother. In addition to that, I must add here that Ichaa has authored a book in which she discusses the challenges that the mother and daughter faced in caring for their Nanima. The book is entitled Our Himalayan Rose, My Dearest Nanima, My Heartbeat. So please join me in this conversation. Hello Manjit. Hello Ichaa.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure is all mine. Can I start by asking you about the book? And I mentioned in the introduction about this book, Our Himalayan Rose, which Ichaa wrote. Ichaa, can I ask you what led you to write this book?
Actually, to be honest, it was my mom who suggested that I should write this book, like a labor of love for Nanima and also for healing, because I was going through a very, very difficult time after losing Nanima. And so when she suggested that I write this book, and I was a bit anxious, but when I started it in May 2023, and the process of doing it is remarkable because it's helping me to heal and process the heartbreak of losing her. And of course, I thought the potential of what I could do by writing the book, basically to use our experiences, to turn our experiences as a resource for others. So basically practical tips for caregivers who might find it useful.
And I think that's an important contribution because often we speak about those who are grappling with a condition, and I think we neglect the caregiver aspect of it as well.
That's right.
And before I turn to actually take up some of the really serious and important issues you raised in the book, can I talk about that process that you mentioned again? Because hearing from you, it seems to me like it's a bit of a cathartic process almost, coming to terms.
Very painful because it made me reflect. I had to break down the timeline, the date, from the time, how it got started. We didn't touch it. All along we were in denial. And then in 2015, she was officially diagnosed.
Officially diagnosed in 2015.
Yes, that's 2015.
Yep, towards the end.
Towards the end.
Of the
And then
year.
from there, and how it became worse and worse until I was going through tough time, but I held on to miracle and hope, I actually believe that she will be okay if we are there for her. But actually, I was living in denial. So basically, it kind of reminder, but really, really painful.
But I think at the end of the day, the process helped her break down the pain, and she came out stronger actually. I think she was
I
able
never thought of
that. Find a purpose from all that pain. She transformed pain into purpose, and that is why this book, I feel, is a very rich resource for other caregivers. From lived experience to practical tips. That's how I saw the book kind of evolved. over time. It took 1.5 years for her to write it.
Wow, 1.5 years. That's right.
She just remembered.
Yeah, that's right. 1.5 years.
I'm an academic. We take very long to write books, so I know how it feels. I actually, the points that both of you raised provide a very good segue into the topic that we are discussing today in our podcast, which is on the experience of caregivers and the challenges that caregivers face. I encourage everybody to actually get a copy of the book, because you very candidly share your own experiences. But since we have you in front of the mics, I'm going to ask some questions about these experiences. So we know that caregiving can be a very challenging process, emotionally, physically, financially, mentally as well. What are the key challenges in both your perspectives that you were confronted with in this situation?
I think we were beyond exhausted. I mean, because dealing with the heartache. So I was dealing with, actually, it was
Watching her deteriorate, I think, was the worst.
It was totally burned out for me. I don't know about
emotional
you.
burnout.
Yeah, I don't know about you, because you seem to be so strong, and you were more realistic.
Realistic, yes.
Realistic. In my case, I was like denial.
Your denial continued longer.
Yeah.
And that took an emotional turmoil. Because you were hoping for a miracle, but the reality was very different.
It was, yeah.
Once it was diagnosed, I accepted and I focused on what needed to be done, especially in terms of putting in the infrastructure, the supporting infrastructure we would require then and into the longer term. But when you are clinging on to hope and miracle, then your take on the situation would be very different. So that's where we differed in our mental and emotional approaches initially. I think that is all that you had said. You covered the entire ground. The emotional heartache, but the worst thing is watching your loved one deteriorate. Losing her memory is one thing, but going through all those personality changes over time. Watching that was, I think, the most painful for me.
And both of you raised this very interesting point about how people respond to such situations, right? And we see that in everybody, and sometimes we see it in the same person as well.
Absolutely,
oscillating between
over time,
yes. Right? So, can I break it down into two? I'll break it down into two categories. One, denial, and maybe denial should be hyphenated with hope. Perhaps, right? Denial and hope. So maybe denial is not that good a word. Hope might be better. But the other one about the practical steps that need to be taken. So let's start with denial stroke hope. I've seen people who have their family members are going through a situation. I've seen cases with dementia as well, where one of the things they tell the person who's going through the situation, nothing is wrong with you. You're fine. But they tell themselves that as well. How, as a caregiver, do you actually grapple with that?
Oh boy.
Sorry.
Yeah. You remind me of this. Among the last lucid conversations I had with my mom, this was sometime in 2016.
Actually, December 2015.
Oh, December. She has an elephant's memory.
That's why she wrote the book.
Absolutely. And she chronologically put everything into a flow that is very realistic and true. In late December 2015, my mom came to me. I remember it so vividly. 15 December. Wow.
2015.
And it was in the afternoon or night?
Night.
Oh my goodness. And I was in the living room. She was in her own room. She came out and she told me this. She said, Manjit, I can feel something is not right with me. There's something wrong with my head. Something's not right. She said, get the doctor to give me some medicine, a pill, anything, so that I can be all right again. So I looked at her and I had to hold myself together so that she won't see me like literally breaking down. And I said, no, Mom, you're all right. It's okay. Nothing's wrong with you. You are going to continue to be okay, and we will always be here for you. Nothing to worry about. And we never told her that she had dementia. Even when she was in a stage where she could maybe make sense of it, we never really told her. How could we? Yeah. it was difficult.
And maybe I'll come back to this issue later, but one of the things that strikes me from what you just said is the fact that caregivers have to not just care but make very difficult and complicated decisions as well.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And there's no handbook for that, is there?
I was going to I was going to say
Yeah.
I was going to say there's no handbook for this, right? Personal experiences.
Yes.
And just to then come back to, we dealt with denial and hope, but the other aspect that you brought out was about practical steps that need to be taken.
Yes.
How did that process kick in your minds? I mean,
Well, we did research.
We did a lot of research. I remember,
Yeah.
and I think you reached out to organisation, right? Did you?
Well, I think the geriatricians who were taking care of mom at the
Oh, yeah,
hospital
yeah.
were very good.
Yeah.
Each time we went for consultation,
They were the ones who gave
basically
advice
kept
and
us on track
yeah.
of what was happening and what was likely to happen in the near future. So that allowed us to put in place all the requirements actually way ahead of time.
That's
So that
right.
was very helpful, because you don't want to come to a situation where you're trying to put things into place after the requirement arises, because that will of course throw you into a state of panic. You may not be in a position to make grounded decisions. It's good to know in advance and then prepare. You have to be very proactive when you're a caregiver for especially an elderly dementia person.
yes, and
yeah, please.
because she was the one who was she was the main, so that really helpful, because she was the one who is the most active, taking charge of everything. I was just behind her, and I would just observe, and she would just tell me, okay, this is how we're going to do it, so just be on the same page as me. So she kept reminding me, look, I know it's difficult, but you need to be strong. We need to be on the same page. So work with me on this. I know what I'm doing. Please, I would be breaking down. It really, I actually meltdown. It was really bad. But mom was super strong too. I don't know how she did it. Yeah, so
I think we
credit
just
go
need to be
her.
practical. But Ichaa took care of the day-to-day. She oversaw the day-to-day activities for mom. Eventually, we had to get in a second caregiver. And Ichaa kind of supervised everything, curated her daily activities, down to the meals. She worked with the caregivers on the type of exercises mom would need on a daily basis, down to even the once a week full body massage that one caregiver was tasked to take care of. So she kind of took care of all those nitty-gritties on a daily basis. Yeah.
Actually, this is hearing you share your experiences. It's like it's the experience that so many people go through,
Yes.
and there's nothing wrong with breaking down as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is they're not mutually exclusive, being
Yes.
strong and also
Yes, yes.
hurting at the same time as well.
Correct.
So let me now zero in, because a number of very interesting pointers have arisen in our conversation so far already. Let me zero in on what practical tips we can take away from a caregiver's experience with regards to caring for someone who has dementia. So let's start with the word practical again. So one of the things I suspect anybody who's dealing with somebody who has dementia, a loved one who has dementia, would probably have to be concerned about is the need to perhaps make the house dementia safe.
Yes,
Perhaps did you go through that experience?
We did.
we did.
We did.
Could you share some of?
Sure. Very important to remove clutter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, anything that can cause tripping, because dementia patients tend to lose sense of coordination over time. They also slowly lose the ability to. They have mobility challenges over time as well. So rugs, anything that they can trip over. You need to install those handlebars, those
handlebar in
grip
the
bars
the
in
bathroom,
all your
yeah.
bathrooms, and the space around them should be kept safe. No forks, no knives, anything that they can potentially use to hurt themselves or others, because they go through phases of confusion and anxiety. And it's not a personal attack if it ever happens. They just don't know what they're doing. So you need to be very, very mindful of these things. Even medication and all that needs to be kept away, and even child lock your drawers where you have medications and stuff like that, because you never know in their heightened state of confusion and disorientation what they might do. And if they have, mom never did that, but some dementia patients do tend to wander off. So you need to have those safety grills or gates in place as well.
Also, we were always with Nanima because she was never alone.
Yeah,
We
if we
always
were
make
not
sure.
there, the caregivers would be.
Yeah.
Strict instructions. She was never to be left alone,
Yeah.
ever. Yeah.
And one of the things we discussed in a previous podcast on dementia was that I learned about how there are multiple forms of dementia,
Yes.
and everybody is impacted in different ways. So these are some of the tips that are useful for generally.
Generally,
Yeah.
yes.
What about the Ichaa? Your mom mentioned that you were in charge of the daily routine, etc. I suspect the daily routine. I may be wrong, but I suspect a daily routine might be important for an individual to have a certain time where certain things are done.
That's right.
Could you share your own experiences about how you framed the routine and how you implemented it?
Okay. Of course, I had to check with mom and the doctor. That is very important. So what we do is, in the morning, we would give. Throughout the day, we would give her 5 meals.
We broke down her meals into
Yeah.
5 small sections.
Yeah,
Smaller
that's right.
meals, but well-balanced meals.
That's right. And also, reflecting exercise and
Mental stimulation.
and of course, we would make her walk. Of course, with exercise and art. That would be music. That would be because she loved music. So basically, music kind of entertainment for her.
And good stimulation too.
Yeah, that's right. So she liked to dance. So sometimes when she in the moment, she would try to dance on
She would jive.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
on the
gonna
chair,
take
the
chair.
sofa. Eventually, we got her a geriatric chair.
in wheelchair. Yeah. So we make sure we included all the activities that include music, art, play. For example, the color.
yes.
So jigsaw puzzle.
Jigsaw puzzles.
Yes.
Yes.
And I will make her, go out, nature walk. I will get her to smell. Because someone once said to me, if you are carrying impaired, no problem. Just make the use of it. Make use of other senses. So we have 5 senses. So I will make sure she will make use of all the senses while she's still
Able
well,
to.
able to. Yeah.
Actually, Ichaa did a fair bit of research and came up with
Positive
positive psychology
intervention.
initiatives. So there was, when mom was still able to engage,
Yeah.
she would get mom to talk about what are the things she is
Grateful for. Yeah.
I know sometimes I still talk about my mom in the present sense, so please
I know.
Because
Same
no,
here.
don't
I'm
mind.
like,
so what are the things she's grateful for?
Oh,
What were memories of the past that she especially holds dear? So when it comes to games, right, when she was still able to engage in games and all that, mom would get very competitive.
she will
And
pray.
then, remember, yes, before she throws that dice, she will pray because she must win. So we would always let her win no matter what. She did not like to color.
Yeah, but
Eventually. So at first it was okay. So we used to buy all those coloring books.
But I will make sure she will get to pick the
Yes,
the
pick the colours.
And
So
then
when she
hand it over
stopped
to me and
wanting
I'll
to color, then Ichaa would say, okay, you pick the color. And then she will hand the color to Ichaa. And then Ichaa will color and say, okay.
Oh, so
So over time,
Yeah.
it declines. The engagement levels declines.
But
Ability to engage in activities declines. So you have to modify, adapt accordingly.
exactly. But the music is always there.
Somehow music stayed with her throughout.
Yeah.
Throughout.
Definitely.
That actually, we could see that the connection to music never really left her. She was always able to respond to music for some reason, right? That was remarkable.
and in some cases with dementia, those who are grappling with dementia, they tend to recall a particular
Past.
stage of their
Yes.
past life or
Yes.
their past
Correct.
more.
Correct.
Is there a particular moment of music genre that she was particularly attached to, and did you play that, or was it any form of music?
Actually, you're right. We noticed when it was Punjabi folk music, a bit more traditional, she tended to kind of regress to the past, and I became the mother. She started addressing me as
And
mother,
Amma.
Amma.
And I would be like a cheater, so she would be
Yes.
very
Okay.
playful with me.
Yes, she was. She was very playful with Ichaa. But it's important to adapt and modify the activities accordingly as their cognitive ability declines. Very, very important. Even vary your communication style. Use shorter sentences and use non-verbal cues more. Hugs and kisses and all that. I know she used to continue to respond to that very positively right to the end. Yeah.
Actually, both of these points that you raised about, one is the activities and also how they, over time, they respond to activities differently, but also the point you mentioned about communication. I was just curious that, when you, one of the things that we find with dementia is that there's heightened levels of anxiety.
Yes.
There's suspicion as well.
Yes.
There's fear. There's also anger.
Yes.
How do you convince someone that doing some activity is actually important for them?
Yeah. Patience and empathy.
Yeah, that's very important.
And adaptability, right?
And adaptability.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get asked the same questions again and again. It's confusion and anxiety that causes that. Give very consistent answers. And what helped with Mum, with Nanima, we used to kind of divert her attention after a while to something else, something that she would enjoy. So we use diversion tactics so that her attention goes into something else, but we try to pick something that she would actually enjoy very, very much, so that she doesn't go back again and again and again to the same thing. Yeah, we learnt along the way too.
Of course,
Yeah,
of course.
and of course, I remember I would put up a comedy act for her.
Yes, yeah, she
Yeah.
enjoyed that.
And my Hindi Punjabi is so bad, so that helped.
She would laugh and shake her head
At the comedy or at the Punjabi?
at her Punjabi. Her attempt to speak Punjabi and Hindi. I sometimes can be quite strict and firm with care providers who I think don't measure up. So sometimes I'm on the phone, scolding and stuff. And then, believe it or not, she looked at me and she can actually shake her head and and in her
hadn't
mind she
changed.
must be thinking there she goes again. So we remember these things, and that was in the advanced stage of dementia, and she was still able to do that. She looked at me and she like, I thought it was funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that's a form of communication.
Yeah.
Right?
So they have these windows, right?
Yeah.
The windows open, then the windows close. The windows open, then the windows close.
And in the making, that she recognized you and I.
Somehow, it's very sad. Like my sisters call from overseas because they try to keep the connection going for as long as possible. Over time, she kind of started to forget them. She showed disinterest in those video calls because she couldn't recognize them. But somehow because we were with her, she remembered us and she remembered our names. She would call out to us in the middle of the night, and then the care provider would come running to our room and say, they called her Dadi. So Dadi's calling you, Dadi's calling you, that kind of thing. Yeah. Because the sense of night and day also becomes warped over time. So many nights she would be up till very, very late, and then she'll be sleeping in the day. So that also happens over time.
This brings us to the end of part 1. We will continue the conversation in part 2, so please join us in the next episode. Thank you for watching our podcast. If you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, and spread the word.